All right, I think it's time to start. Good evening. Welcome to the conference. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have the trumpets this year because I think most of you were here before. You remember the trumpets. We had always a trumpet concert outside, and that was the sign that the conference started. And today I'm very thankful to Gabriel that he came in to replace the trumpets and help us out with starting the conference. So welcome to the Fall 2013 Third International PUARL Conference here at the University of Oregon in Portland. It is a real pleasure for me to welcome all and many of you for the third time to this special conference, honored guests, friends, students, colleagues, and participants who made it from abroad, from Europe, Austria in particular, the Middle East, Far East, Japan, South America, as well as from a number of cities and universities in the US. Do you understand me, or is it mic working? Yep. Great, okay. Welcome also from the College of Architecture and Allied Arts, or AAA as we call it here, in the name of our Dean Francis Brunet and our chairwoman Judith Scheiner. Both Francis and Judith have different obligations this evening. They are on a special dance evening because our Dean is into dance, not only as dancing but also as her academic activity. They wish us a very successful conference and all of you a good experience here in Portland. In fact, I just received an email from Francis that says, "Wish I could have been there." I also would like to announce that Professor Christoph Alexander will not be able to attend. I have invited him to Oregon and the conference, but he needs to stay at home in West Sussex, south of London, because of health reasons, as many of us know. The last time I met him in August of this year, he still wished us good progress at the conference, love and enjoyment, and maybe some fun, especially in the Halloween season. I think he meant that kind of fun, but that was yesterday. Today we have a different kind of fun. Is this too light here? Should we make it a little bit darker?
Yes.
Yes, let's just see if we can make it a little darker here. Is that better? No, this is better, I think. No? Is this relatively good? Or you want to switch off the lights? I think that has to be done in the back. Yeah. That might be better. But I still can read here, so that's good. As all of you know by now, but I'm going to repeat it, my name is Hajo Neis. I'm the director of the Portland Architecture Programs, and I'm also your host together with the Portland Urban Architecture Research Laboratory team and the PUARL Advisory Board, as well as the Collaborative of Inclusive Urbanism, represented by Professor Davis. And not to forget our students from the Human Context class, the Urban Architecture Studio, and the Thesis Design Seminar. I also happen to be the director of the Portland Urban Architecture Research Laboratory, or PUARL, that conducts this conference every 2 years. Before we come to the main event of the evening and the introduction of our guest of honor, Professor Johann Jessen from the Technical University in Darmstadt in Stuttgart, who will deliver the PUARL lecture this year, I would like to give a brief introduction to the main topics of the conference that should help us to better understand the agenda, its main purpose, and what we might and would like to expect from the conference lectures. First, let me introduce you to the overall title of the conference, Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth. As we all know, this title is taken from a recent book by Chris Alexander. I and others, some are actually in this audience, were also involved in some form in this project. So let me just make a few important points about this work and ask how it might relate to our conference themes. I will start with quotes from two reviews of the book. First, William M. Hamilton from the Wall Street Journal writes, "Things are falling apart. All the goodness in man's creation and have been since 1900 and the dawn of modernity," Alexander states in his new book, The Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth. It is hard to argue that environments are increasingly sterile, as Alexander says, and rarely nourishing, rarely places for happiness, excitement, romance, content and love, but a pattern language delicately observed, deftly reasoned, poetically presented alternative to the sleek cynicism of modern architecture has turned to the offense, attacking with the aggressive take no prisoner posture of battle. It is no longer enough to take the high road. The book's fight-mongering stance suggests you have to bulldoze the low road too. If you get pushed, as one of the protagonists of the book literally is, you push back. And another reviewer, who actually sits in this audience, Michael Mehaffey, writes, it joins other cautionary books of recent years. Jane Jacobs' Dark Age Ahead comes to mind, warning that indeed we have a choice and indeed a struggle if you want to avert an unfolding planetary disaster. The choice is between a more beautiful, more humane, more sustainable basis for design or continuation of the status quo, a default option that looks increasingly untenable. Quote end. And here is a quote by the authors of the battle book themselves, reasoning why we cannot just stay with the status quo anymore, but why we need to take a strong position and vision of the future of the built environment and its civilization. The creativity of society and the creativity of the environment and the way we build, they are fundamental. They go to the health and freedom of society and to the capacity for society and environment to bring a valued and enchanting life to its inhabitants. To bring such a civilization into being, we must arrive at a new state of affairs in which the world's societies are able to create and recreate a healthy atmosphere, environment, buildings, and outdoor places which hold our thoughts together, places that give us a coherent picture of the world from which we obtain nourishment, spiritual and material. We must build a civilization in which individuals are able to like themselves, to heal themselves, and to love one another in generosity. Without that, how will we ever be able to give ourselves, all of us and our children and their children, a good and worthwhile life? Battle, page 12. Now we can laugh again. But it needs to be pointed out that the project did not start out as an intention for a battle. This is something that I have never talked about in a public lecture, partially because the book Battle was not published yet. Even close friends of mine may not know about what I'm going to show you next and talk about. Is this on a timer here? I'm not sure. Did you see it, the picture changing by itself? I'm wondering because this is. Oh yeah, okay, okay, we are fine. All right. Yes, it needs to be pointed out that the project did not start out as an intention for a battle. This is something, as I said already, that I have not talked about to many people. Some of you may know, I may have hinted at it, but it is something that maybe, at least publicly, I have never talked about it. It is reasonable to ask the question why a book about this topic and project was published 27 years after its architectural project was completed in its first main phase and 30 years after the project was started. There may be several answers to this question, and some of them are quite relevant for our conference. Here I would like to give only one main reason why this book took so much time to be finalized and published. The original title of the book for this project was called The Total Opposite of the Final Book Title. First, the book manuscript was actually called the following: The Ordinary Way. And that we have never really talked about. And this is the original first pages of that book with that title. And as you can see, there's nothing about a battle in there. This is all about something very consistent with the overall theory and philosophy. And also you can see that the subtitle of the book was called The Story of Building the New Asian University in Tokyo. There's no word of battle or fight or struggle of System A and System B. There's just a very simple title, The Ordinary Way. It is also relevant to note that the original title does not include the word design. The word design is only included in the table of contents, as you can see on the right side. Already here, we may detect the intention of not only designing, but more importantly, also building the project ourselves. And we may speculate that the seeds of the battle were already included in this seemingly harmless working title, The Ordinary Way. It is this topic of direct production of life and beauty that relates directly to our second theme and session of the conference tomorrow afternoon. Building production for a more beautiful and resilient world. Let me read to you the first two paragraphs of the introduction to The Ordinary Way. The New Asian University is a university entirely dedicated to the problem of the community and local autonomy. It is founded on the simple belief that one great period of human society just ended and that another is now beginning. What they may call the modern age began at about the end of the 15th century. We believe that it has ended about 1980 and that in the last part of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, an entirely new age will be created. This was written in 1983, just to remind you. A new age in which new methods of production and new human relationships will form the basis of society is now about to begin. One of the central ideas is the formation in the formation of this new age is the idea of local autonomy and local control. This idea may be summarized in a German word Gemeinschaft that was talked about a lot by von Tönnies and Max Weber. It is also summarized by the old meaning of the Russian Soviet, even though this word has been entirely destroyed by its connection with 20th century Russian communism, and it is described to some degree, but much less so, by the English word community. All these concepts refer to a type of human group in which personal relations and personal identification of people within society form the basic interaction and also, most important, form the definition of the individual self. Starting with these very idealistic and progressive ideas about a new age, a new society as indicated in this early text, it was certainly rather difficult to adjust and deal with the more harsh but necessary reality of a battle. And I should know that because I was the responsible project architect in Tokyo who had to fight many of these battles on the ground, as many of you know. Dealing with the part of the project that involved battle and struggle took on so much prominence that this aspect took over our lives and certainly delayed the project and the conception and completion of the book also considerably. Changing and working with the new title of the book became a major issue for a quarter of a century. And this does not only include the main title, but the subtitle as well. Until about the year 2000, for example, the title was simply Battle. And the subtitle was The History of a Crucial Clash Between World System A and World System B. Now that title didn't really fit anymore the times, and obviously had to be changed, and the book had to be changed. But during the long decade until last year, the world has changed considerably, and with it the title of the book again, and it adapted more to the issues and problems of our times until it finally and appropriately turned into the almost heroic title, Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth. When we look at all the book titles and books that Alexander and his colleagues have produced since the early 60s, it is obvious that The Ordinary Way provides a theme and title that is very consistent with the rest of the book titles and its contents that are part of the CES series. The new book, Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth, does not quite fit into this series of books that show scientific topics, a humanistic attitude, design innovations, and progressive methods in design, planning, and construction for the built environment. The question that may be permitted to ask if this book marks a new attitude and direction in the work of CES and its associated organizations and companies, or is it an aberration, an outlier? Does this book contribute to a larger agenda that not only addresses architecture and urban design, but also addresses the plight of our built environment, the pollution of our oceans, the large loss of animals and plant life, and carbon emissions and greenhouse effects that started to destroy life on Earth as we know it, and what to do about these larger problems. In some way, we have to accept and understand that both aspects of ordinary way and battle are two sides of the same coin, and both aspects are reflected in the actual project in Japan. This is the actual project. I have a few slides of that. The project in which the battle was fought is the Asian College and High School campus at the outskirts of Tokyo, and while the flags in the field of the first illustration that you see on top may suggest a battle that was fought, the rest of the illustrations show more of an ordinary way and the building production for a more beautiful and resilient world. This is the project in 1987. Some parts at the lower end were still not built in the college area. This is in the winter in 1985, because it also snows there. And another photo over the lake to the home base street and the gymnasium. This is the Great Hall with the main gate in the back. I only just show a few so you get at least an impression of what the battle was about. And this is Japanese kind of heavy timber construction that we applied in various buildings of the campus. And here lots of details that were photographed here right after the building was finished. The first phase was finished in 1984. And this is on our last visit in December 2012, where I could have shown lots of pictures which show the building and the site more mature. And I just show one because that is not the main point of this lecture here. These illustrations take me one more time to the battle book, and another dimension or secret, if you want, that I have not talked about publicly so far. We have not really mentioned or not talked about the subtitle of the book, A Struggle Between World Systems. These two world systems are defined as System A and System B in a simplified form, and they play a major role in the book and the project itself. System B, the dominant production system today, seeks to profit from development and produces structures through unfeeling mechanical procedures that destroy opportunities for joy and human satisfaction. System A, the alternative, allows meaning to be built up progressively by benign, modest steps in the careful nurturing of our physical world. It is here that I need to mention unpublished chapter 24. That's what we call it at least. That is not part of the published version of the book. It is called Large-Scale Building Production, Unification of the Human System and the Physical System. This chapter starts to deal explicitly the System A and System B in the making of the built environment for now and the future. And it gives some hope for a possible combination or recombination of the two opposing systems. Here I will quote the beginning two paragraphs of the unpublished chapter 24. Our main aim in this chapter, System A, by itself cannot make high-volume, high-speed construction when needed. System B can do it and has demonstrated it in many places. System B by itself cannot lavish the finesse and subtlety which makes it possible to generate the finely adapted buildings and spaces which make life worth living and comfort the human heart. System A can do it and has demonstrated it for thousands of years. It must surely be clear by now that we need to make a combination of A and B, a combined system which maintains the best of two worlds in production, and yet it does it in such a way as to avoid making the horrible mistakes we have seen in abundance in the shortcomings of new environments built under System B conditions in the 20th century. Quote end. But despite these glorious words, finally, the chapter was not included, probably because we did not exactly believe in it, or maybe we were not quite ready yet to make such a step. This also means that more research needs to be done in this area of large-scale building production that might be called creation production for a living world. Or in fact, we started work on a project that we call practical action, types of production that will generate living and beautiful environments. In all of this, we should not forget PUARL, the Portland Urban Architecture Research Laboratory, and its work and vision in this context. And while PUARL is perceived as a Portland-based laboratory that deals with urban architecture and urban projects within Portland and other cities and beyond, it is also true that PUARL continues the pattern language tradition and the overall pattern language approach as part of its mission. On the one hand, the Portland Urban Architecture Research Lab is perceived as doing urban architecture projects in Portland and the region. And on the other hand, PUARL is also perceived very differently internationally as doing projects and research in the pattern language tradition. That's a very, very unusual dichotomy that I experience when I get many invitations from international places. It's because of the pattern language, not because of we do projects in Portland. PUARL research and creative work can be summarized with essential principles that are part of the overall pattern language approach, that's what I call it, that we are working with and incorporate in our research and urban design projects. Please note that pattern and pattern language is not the only principle in the long list that you can see here, and this list is not even ended. But please note, pattern is not the only principle. In fact, pattern makes only for about 5 to 8% of the work that we do in our architectural work, because with patterns alone you cannot do buildings, as we all know. But I need to say that because there are quite a few people in the world who think patterns is the main thing and then you just do it. That's not the way it works. These are some projects that we have done in PUARL over the last few years, and I just want to mention that we have some new projects coming up, like patterns and sustainability, and that sort of gives you at least an overview of the work that we are doing right now. And with that, I would like to start to talk about the 3 sessions that we have tomorrow. We have 4, or we have, with tonight's session, we have 4 sessions, so we have 4 very good overall sessions in this conference. One main session is the session on inclusive urbanism tomorrow morning. This session is introduced by the keynote lecture of Professor Howard Davis, and it is my pleasure to welcome Professor Davis, who leads the Collaborative for Inclusive Urbanism, CRU, and you see the sign on the right-hand side, which also functions as a PUARL partner in this year's conference. Here's a quote from the website of the CRU. The role of the city is to provide the context that invite people to realize their social, personal, and economic aspirations. This invitation should be available to all. So this is a very fundamentally social approach to making life in the city more livable. The second main session on Saturday afternoon focused on building production for a more beautiful and resilient world. If cities themselves are the organic product of human need, what is the process by which the production of the physical structures of buildings, neighborhoods, parks, and urban landscapes support and augment urban life? What are the building processes that create neighborhoods, urban landscapes, and buildings that are resilient and alive with themselves and that support those all-important intangibles of life and beauty, the life worth living? This main theme session will be introduced by keynote speakers Professor Stephen Duff and Professor Sergio Pelleroni. Finally, the third session focuses on regenerative design and emergent processes. Here we ask, how can generative and emergent processes as well as regenerative urban design help to solve some of the current worldwide urban challenges that we face in our cities, neighborhoods, streets, parks, and urban landscapes around the globe? What are the methods, ideologies, and vocabularies that can support the creation of built environments that are complex, complete, diverse, resilient, beautiful, and emergent over time? The session will be introduced by keynote speaker Professor Masami Kobayashi from Japan. The final keynote lecture will be delivered by Professor Peter Baumgartner from the University of Krems in Austria. Peter will also talk about an initiative for a new kind of pattern conference in Europe that we are considering right now, starting possibly in 2015. At the end and related to this topic, I want to include in this introduction my current students and their thesis studio work of the last 2 years that is focusing on projects that originated with natural disasters and catastrophic human failures and are to be understood as responses to these disasters and failures. As pars pro toto, I'm only going to show you one particular project out of more than 50 developed by Nadia Kasko for the devastated town of Ishinomaki in the Tohoku region in Japan, north of Tokyo. Here you can see the results of this disaster. And then Nadia was doing a wonderful project, and which she calls Fury and Fragility. She was developing a new idea for, just to tell you a little detail, a detail of not building a wall at the beginning of the ocean, because that would destroy pretty much the area behind it, and there are many cases in Japan like this. So she developed an area that slowly steps up, and only when it's a certain height, like 8 to 10 meters, then actually people are safe, and nobody should live in this area. That all these areas that were flat were all destroyed all along. And Professor Kobayashi gave a fantastic lecture 2 years ago about that event, and he has similar battles to fight in his own work. Innovative drawing styles, and she developed a water treatment plant within that area that she did not want to have any more built housing for people that would actually easily be victims of the next tsunami that might not be, it's not so unlikely that it might happen again. When I visited Ishinomaki last December with Howard and Masami, we were very, very excited to see her work being exhibited on a house wall in Ishinomaki in an area that was not destroyed. And I'm not sure how that works, but they put the designs right on the house wall and show it and show their appreciation for Nadia's involvement. She was very influential in the discussion, including the governor of the region, how to actually redevelop that zone. And her proposal was taken very seriously, and she's highly respected by the people in Ishinomaki. She's now working in Hawaii, but her work is one wonderful example how students can actually, in their thesis work, make a huge difference in terms of what's happening in the world and what's hopefully happening more positively in the world. Let me make an overall statement with regard to this new generation. Overall, I feel and experience a new generation of students who understand the recent large-scale kinds of difficulties we have in the world of today around us, and who are willing to actually focus their energy and work on doing something about it. This new generation is very promising in ideas and attitude of pragmatic idealism, and I feel very privileged to be part of them. And when I may mention to Johan, I have a little bit of a feeling they are getting closer to our student revolution generation, where we had something like this that I can feel again. Susan is smiling, but I have to make that remark, obviously. Finally, I think I'm almost done. Finally, I would like to hand over to my very competent and creative students who are in charge of many aspects of this conference, including panel discussions, organization of and introduction of the speakers, timekeeping, and exhibition of works. And as you can see, all around, students have set up their work that they're not finished works. There's current work in the making. Nothing is finished, and there's a particular map at the end where you're supposed to go. You see that map over there? You're supposed to go and take a pin, and I think there's also a code with colors, and then take that pin and show where you come from in the world. And then there are other things there. It's a very complex map that show the works that the students do, and you have to go there. I was just told to tell you, I don't know the details, but it should be very interesting to then they want to actually make a photo of it and put it in the publication. That's the idea, and I think Vanessa had the idea, and she started to do that. Thank you, Vanessa. But yeah, coming back to finishing up here, the first speaker students will introduce is my colleague Johann Jessen from the Technical University of Stuttgart in Germany, who will deliver the PUARL lecture and talk about a topic that may be closely related to the theme of inclusive urbanism. It is called Reurbanization, and it covers German cities and American examples, but mostly German cities today. Johann and I know each other from student times in Darmstadt when he was 1 or 2 years ahead of me. But let me hand over to our wonderful students who will do a much better job of introduction than I possibly can do. Thank you very much.